Hello, all of my crafty friends. It's Kiona, the craft therapist, here with another video for 7 Kids Craft to introduce the August release. These are the Pizzeria Kids, and this other set that we have for today's video is called the Pizza Parlor. Now we have both of these sets that will go really well, and I'm going to use some of these little images and this little pizza guy for my card for today. Now there was another set that came out last month that's called the Ice Cream Parlor, and I am going to be using the counter from that for our card today. So we're going to go ahead and jump right into our coloring first. I'm just going to color up one of each of the images for you guys while I tell you guys a little bit about the hop. This is going to be another linked hop today. So if you look in my description box, you will get the names of all of our design team members who are hopping along to give you lots of inspiration with regards to this new release that came out today. Kelly, the owner of 7 Kids Crafts, is generously giving away a $20 gift certificate to the store. So please make sure that you are leaving a comment and liking. If you love what you're seeing, consider subscribing to the channels so that you can get all of the content that we bring for 7 Kids Crafts. And we will do an announcement for the winner, and all of the information regarding that will also be in my description box. So what I've done here is I've picked out a skin tone for a fair skin and some golden blondish hair for our pizzeria guy. And I'm going to color up all of the guys the exact same way, but I'm only going to show one of them. So these are fairly tiny images, so I did not do a ton with the images, but I did use 3 or 4 color blends on most of them. I did a red color combination for his little handkerchief around his neck because his hat and his chef's coat, I wanted to maintain that as white. So you will see that I'm going to do some little shading and shadowing to the white area, but I'm going to try to leave the majority of it white, just focusing those shadows on the places that I see the creases where 2 points meet, as well as on the edges, because especially with the hat, this is a round object, so I wanted it to look as if it had some roundness to it. But I'm only using my C5 3-in-1 for these images because I don't want to go too dark, and I want to make sure I leave a lot of white space, because at the end I want this image to still look as if the hat and the chef's coat are white. Once we get done coloring this part up, and all I'm doing is I'm going where the handkerchief is, where the coat overlaps, where his arms are bent, and where the arms are cuffed, and those are the areas that I'm putting in my shadows, and I'm just going directly over each color to blend it out more and to blend it into white without taking up too much of the space. Again, these are not really large images. They're okay size, but I did not want to try to overpower it and end up making a image that did not look white. I only used one color for the pizza tray and then for the crust of the pizza, because again, this is very small and kind of detailed. And then I'm going to move on to this brick oven I thought was super cute, and I had an idea to kind of make it look as if it was inside the wall. I hope that I bring this all together for you guys, but I decided to use a warm gray combination for the concrete portion of the wood stove, and then I used an earth tone combination to color up the actual bricks of the brick oven. So what I did was I used my darkest color, the W9, to be closest to the fire and where the bricks are laying, and I'm just going to blend that outward into the lightest color, which I believe my lightest color was a W3 in this image. And I'm just going to go directly in with my darkest color and blend out to the lightest color, because I did not want to run the risk of having any bleeding, since my images were not huge and did not allow a lot of space for multiple passes. I just did not want to run that risk, so I went directly in and just tried to make sure that I blended those out very well on that first pass. And because these are natural color combinations, natural blending groups, I did not have a lot of trouble getting those colors to blend together. So now we're working on the brick areas, and I did the E19, 17, 15, and 13 for this combination. Again, trying to work with a natural blending group so that I would have a lot less issues with the colors blending together. Sometimes when you're working outside of your blending groups, you have to make sure you have your numbers correct so that you can get easier blending. And in this case, I just thought it would be easier to go with a natural blending group so that I could ensure that I got the colors right and the blending correct on the first try. Then I'm going to go in with the fire, and I used some YR and Y markers to make my fire inside. I'm going to use a G combination to color up these potted plants. I have 3 of them stamped out, again just showing one on the coloring here. And I brought these in so that I could bring in some pops of color. Of course, I did his handkerchief in red, so I did the pot of the plant in red, and bringing in some greens just to bring in a little more variation in color into my scene, because I was using a lot of whites and grays, and I wanted to make sure that I had a little bit of pops of color to bring some interest into our scene that we are creating. So I went ahead and colored up the leaves, going from the center being my darkest point and then working my way out to the lightest. And then with the pot, because this is a round object, I'm going in from the edges coming into the center to try to show a center highlight for that. Then we're going to work on our sign. Again, I'm using just that single color to color the crust and inside the pizza. Because these are facing upwards, it looked like it gave me a little more space, so I did bring in a lighter color for the center. And then I'm going to use my C markers again to color up the sign. And I'm just doing a shadowing on the left side and around where this pizza is sitting on the sign, just to try to give that a little bit of dimension and make that pop up just a tad. Then I will bring in one of my YR markers again, just to color in the spaces where the writing would be on the menu sign, just to give a little additional interest in this portion of the image. And again, working with those natural blending groups so that I would not have a difficult time blending in the colors together. So once we get that done, I'm going to take that over to my scan and cut, and then I'm going to start working on the front of my card. So I'm going to do a slim line. So I've cut this down to 8.5 by 3.5. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring this counter out from the ice cream parlor, and I'm going to just stamp up the left edge. Then I'm going to move it all the way over to the right and stamp the right edge. And then I'm going to fill in the center with my Memento Tuxedo Black ink. And I will be doing some masking. I won't show all of this on the screen because it was a little bit tedious to make sure that I got everything lined up. But I used some of my Post-it note tape to tape off the portion that I wanted to make sure did not get any ink on it. So I'm just going to be stamping that left edge because I just want these corners right now. And what I'm doing is I'm extending the length of the bar area so that I can have this bar go all the way the entire length of my panel. So I'm using a piece of acetate here because I did not clean off my stamp and I wanted to make sure that I didn't end up inadvertently getting ink in the wrong place. I did end up getting a little bit of ink in the wrong place anyway, but it was okay because once I did all of my coloring for the countertop, it did not show. So I'm just going to do the exact same thing on the right side that I did on the left side, and I'm going to ink this up and I'm going to stamp that down so that I can just get that edge. And then I'm going to use the remainder of the stamp to stamp out the center going all the way across, and that will give me the counter that I am looking for. So once we have that done, I'm going to bring out another piece of masking paper. This masking paper is by Simon Says Stamp, and I'm just going to cover the entire bottom edge of this stamped image. I'm going to do this because I'm going to do some ink blending over the top portion of the of our card panel, and so I want this to be two different colors, so I'm going to mask off that bottom piece. So I'm going to bring out this stencil. This is the small brick stencil from My Favorite Things. I'm going to bring that out, and before I lay this down, I'm going to bring out some Fired Brick Distress Oxide ink and one of my blending brushes, and I'm going to ink blend this entire background, trying to focus my darker color up top and bringing it out a little bit toward the bottom. It doesn't really end up mattering at the end because I'm going to cover the majority of this up, but for some reason in my mind I wanted it to be darker at the top than it was at the bottom. Now, once I get all of my ink blending done, I'm going to bring that stencil back in, and I'm going to bring in some Nouveau Glacier paste in the Golden Era color, and I'm going to use this stencil and stencil that Golden Era over the top of this distressed oxide panel. Now, it doesn't have to be perfect. What I did was I went ahead and did this first half, and then I moved it and realigned it over to the right and did it again. And it was not absolutely perfect. It did line up pretty well, but it wasn't perfect, and it did not need to be. It gave the effect of a brick wall, which was exactly what I was going for, and it looked really well once it all dried. So we are going to finish up doing that part, and then I will sit that aside and allow it to dry while I work on putting the rest of the panels together on this card. So as you can see, it did not come out perfect, but that was okay. It just gave a little bit of interest to that center part, and most of that ends up getting covered up anyways. As I said, I'm going to put the brick oven there, so it did not end up being seen too much when we were done in the end anyways. Now, I will tell you, once you are done working with the glacier paste and really any other medium that you're doing with these stencils, it is very important to immediately take them to the sink and get them washed, and make sure you're very careful removing your mask so that you don't rip your paper. You can rip the mask, but don't rip your paper. So now that we have that done, and I'm going to go ahead and sit that to the side so that I can finish working on the panels. So I have some red glitter paper and then a red and black plaid paper that I decided that I wanted to use. And I've cut out the word love from my Cricut in that glitter cardstock as well. So I'm going to glue those loves together and stack them up. They will be 4 high so that I can have more of a chipboard look for that portion of the sentiment that I will use. I'm using art glitter glue from maymaymadeit.com, and I'm going to get that all glued together. And once I get it glued together, I will then sit this part off to the side because this will not be needed until we are much closer to the end of the card making. So I'm just stacking those up together, and like I said, it ends up being 4 thick, which makes a really nice chipboard effect, which is something that I personally love with my sentiments. Then I am going to go ahead and glue this plaid pattern to that red glitter cardstock, and I thought that this red and plaid and black went together very well for the theme of a pizza parlor. So once I get that done, I'm going to sit that little piece aside, and then I'll bring in my inside. I had the Cricut write a sentiment that's actually in the stamp set, but I wanted it to be larger for the inside of the card. And it says, no matter how you slice it, you're awesome. That is actually a sentiment that is in the stamp set. However, I just had my Cricut write it because I wanted it to be a little bit larger on the inside of my card. And I'm going to glue that to that red and black plaid and then to that glitter cardstock. And we're going to sit those aside and allow those some time to dry. Now, once we get all of that done, we will be ready to move on to the next part of our card. We have these 2 pieces done, and now I will bring back in those pieces that we were using a little while earlier to create our scene. So here is our background all dry. I'm going to bring in some gray markers, and I am going to use that to fill in the wall behind this counter space. So I'm just going to start out with a C3, and I'm just going to put a whole wash of color down where the C3 where the counter space is, just putting a line down around it to create a shadow. And what I was going for was a two-toned looking wall. So you would have the brick wall up at the top and then maybe a painted wall down at the bottom. So that was kind of what I was going for, and I wanted to get around the counter really well and then fill in everything else around that space of the counter. Once I get that done, then I will move in and I'm going to go ahead and color up this counter and do a very simple wood grain type of look for the actual wood pieces of the counter. Now, I did this in a previous video that I showed, and all I'm going to do is I'm going to start out with my lightest color and I'm going to do an entire wash of color on the entire the entirety of the counter piece. Once I get that done, I'm just going through with my other three darker colors, and I'm going to just do a series of squiggly lines, a couple circles to make some knots and things of that sort in order to create some texture in this countertop to make it look as if it is wood. There is really no rhyme or reason. I'm not trying to create perfect lines. I'm allowing my marker to skip. I'm doing squiggles, C's, figure eights, sixes, just little variations to create a look of wood for this counter. Now, once I get all the way through to my darkest color, I'm going to come back in and go over everything with the lightest color of my marker. And that is just going to allow everything to start working together in order to mix them a little bit better. It's going to kind of meld them together. That's what I call it. And then that actual countertop, I will create a layer of color there, and it's just going to be a single layer. There's not any color variation. I wasn't trying to do any shadowing or anything. I just laid down the one layer of color. So once we have that done, we will start working on placing our images where we want them to go. So we have the one brick oven, the two menus, I have 3 plants, and then I have 3 of our pizza guys. And I'm going to start building up my scene. Now, because this is very textured at the top, I decided that it would probably be best to use some 1/8" score tape for those top images, the brick oven and the menus. And then I am going to use some double-sided foam tape for both, or not both, all three of my pizza guys. And then I will use my liquid glue to glue down my plants here in the front. And I am going to work on putting my other sentiment right here. So I'm going to move that plant to a different area because I'm going to want that sentiment that says, "You have a piece of my heart," to go into the center. So now that I have my layout kind of dry fitted, you guys know that I always say that I do a dry fit to my cards, I'm going to go ahead and start taping everything off and getting them placed where I want everything to be. Now, I am going to do another kind of dry fit, placing those little chef guys where I want them to be. So that gives me an idea of where I want my brick oven and the two menus to go. So I'm going to go ahead and start taking all of that tape off and then placing down the brick oven and then both of the menus into place. And this tape sometimes gives me a very hard time and I have to play with it, but it's not too bad. So I'm going to go ahead and stick down my brick oven first, and I'm just kind of using the grooves of the brick to help me line up the actual oven. And then I'm going to do the same thing with the two pizza signs or the pizza menus on the left and the right side. So that's what that looks like. And then I'm going to take my double-sided tape, and I use the Scotch 3M foam tape for this, and I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to back all three of my chefs with that foam tape. Once I get all of those done, then I'm going to go ahead and take off the foam tape and start laying down the chefs where I want those to be. This chef, I want it to look like he's taking taking a pizza out of the oven. That sounds a lot better. It looks like he's taking a pizza out of the oven, and then the other two are serving. And then I'm going to take my art glitter glue that I get from maymaymadeit.com, and I'm going to start placing my plants in the front of the counter. And I just felt like this would give some more dimension. I thought that having three different layers of sentiments images would give some additional dimension to the card. Now I've brought in that sentiment strip, and I'm going to bring in some Judikins embossing powder, and I'm going to treat that paper with my anti-static powder tool. I'm going to then stamp it out with my VersaFine Onyx Black ink, and I'm going to powder that with the Judikins embossing powder, and then I'm going to heat set it. Once I get that all smooth and melted, I am going to bring back in that fired brick distress oxide, and I'm going to make my paper the same color as that fired brick on the inside of my card base, or on the front panel of my card. Then I am going to wipe that off, and I'm going to cut that down into a small sentiment strip. I think it ends up being maybe about 1/2 inch. And then I'm going to also glue that down with some foam tape for the front of our card. And so what we will have is my sentiment is going to say, "Love, you have a pizza, my heart." I thought that was so cute. I can't stand it. I loved it so much. So you have a piece of my heart, and then I will put that love up in the left corner. Now, because I had some warping to this panel from using the distressed oxides and then adding that glimmer paste, I am going to take my 3M foam tape and I'm going to back the entire backing of this panel with foam tape, and that is going to help straighten out my panel. Once I get that done, I'm going to bring back in that plaid and red glitter, and I'm going to place this panel over the top, and that's what the front portion of our card is going to look like. Now we bring that love sentiment back in, and I'm going to put that right up there in the top left corner, and I'm going to place that shadow area down first. Then I'm just going to put some liquid glue in the areas where I know it will touch the card panel, and then I'm going to glue in the red glitter portion. So there is our love, and then you have a piece of my heart. I think that came out super, super cute. I hope you guys enjoyed that as well. Then I'm going to bring in my Spectrum Noir sparkle pen, because you know I love my sparkles and my shimmers. And so I'm just going to shimmer up everything. I'm shimmering the plants, the hats, the pizza menus, and everything. Then I'm going to bring in my card base, which I decided to use a black shimmer cardstock as our card base for this one. And this comes from Cricut as well. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to fold that, and then I'm going to place the inside of my panel in with liquid glue. And I use liquid glue just because it gives me a little bit of time to get everything lined up. And once I get that lined up, we can glue down the front portion of our card base. I'm going to bone fold my card base just to make sure that it's nice and crisp, because this is a thicker cardstock and it's got kind of a plastic backing to it. So I wanted to make sure that I got that really, really good and adhered. So then the last thing that I'm going to do is get this panel glued onto the front, and that is going to finish off our card for today. I hope that you guys have thoroughly enjoyed this. I enjoyed this set, and I will have everything listed in the description box below so that you can go and get yours. Make sure that you're leaving a comment and hopping along for your chance to win in the giveaway for this month. And I will see you guys again really soon in the next video. Bye-bye.